Her daughter left me with her stepmother, who cut me out of her life. Years later, the daughter approached me on the grounds that I was richer than her mother and asked me to pay for her expensive wedding. I'm honestly thankful that my daughter, Emily, has a fantastic bond with her stepmom, Lisa. To give you some background, my ex-husband John and I didn't have the best relationship. We were young and in love, thinking marriage was the right move. When I got pregnant with Emily, John tried to step up as a dad, but he was incredibly lazy. Despite his efforts to be a good father, John never really helped with Emily. I was the one feeding her, changing diapers, staying up all night, bathing her, and taking her for walks. John would come home, spend an hour playing with Emily while I cooked or cleaned, then head off to his man cave to play video games. He'd tell me it was a woman's job to handle the kids, saying it was all part of God's plan. We argued a lot when I begged for his help because I was beyond exhausted, but he always refused. One day I was too sick to move and asked him to watch Emily so I could rest. Instead of helping, he called me lazy and claimed his mom never asked his dad for help. That infuriated me because he was just as much Emily's parent as I was, but never lifted a finger. I yelled that if he didn't start helping, I'd leave him. That seemed to get through a bit, and he grudgingly took some time off work to care for Emily so I could get a few hours of sleep. My maternity leave was ending, so I asked my mom to watch Emily during my work hours, and she kindly agreed. John's mom never offered to help, but I was okay with that. John didn't like me working. He wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom. He kept pushing me to be a housewife, but I always refused. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't quit my job because when John lost his job due to company downsizing, it was a huge blow to him and the other employees. When he told me, I wanted to panic because we needed the money to take care of Emily and cover household expenses. But I knew if I panicked, it would only make things worse. So, I reassured him that I'd handle all the bills until he got back on his feet and urged him to find a new job. Once John found another job, I asked him to look after Emily so my mom could have a break from babysitting. At first he was hesitant, but he eventually agreed. Every day, I'd come home to find John in the same spot on the couch playing video games, with Emily playing on the floor next to him. Basic tasks like feeding and bathing were neglected, and I'd often find Emily hungry and in dirty clothes. This made me furious because I had no choice but to work hard to support my family on my own. On the flip side, I felt terrible knowing my daughter Emily was being neglected. I recall those days when John and I had endless arguments. He claimed he was job hunting, but he never went to any interviews. 6 months into his unemployment, John announced he wanted to take a business course. He had always dreamed of starting his own company, but I felt it wasn't the right moment. I wanted him to secure a stable job first. However, it turned out he had already talked it over with his parents, and they were ready to fund his college education. I was the last to know, making me feel utterly disregarded as his partner. I should have left then, but like a fool, I stayed. While I juggled work and caring for Emily, John went back to school. Eventually, he graduated and launched his own business. Things were going well, and he started hiring staff. That's when Lisa entered the picture. VJ, a young, enthusiastic girl fresh out of college, hired as his personal assistant. John and Lisa spent a lot of time together, but I never suspected anything. The idea of him cheating never crossed my mind until he began introducing Emily to Lisa whenever he took her to his office. He insisted that Emily and Lisa spend time together, which raised my suspicions. I confronted John directly, asking if there was anything going on between them. He denied it, saying I was overreacting, and I let it go. That was until one day a friend called me, saying she had seen John and Lisa holding hands at a CAF GC. She didn't know who they were, but she thought I should know. I wasn't just embarrassed that John was cheating, I dreaded everyone finding out. That night, I insisted John invite Lisa to dinner, pretending I wanted to get to know her better since she worked for him. He had no clue I had proof of his infidelity. During dinner, I bluntly told them I was tired of their sneaking around and knew everything. John froze, and Lisa turned pale. I told her I didn't care if she was sleeping with my husband because our marriage was beyond saving. Lisa stammered that she never meant for this to happen and apologized for everything. John, on the other hand, demanded to know why I had invited her if I already knew. He said I had no right to humiliate them and refused to apologize, claiming I was the one who failed to save our marriage. At first, I laughed at his audacity as he kept blaming me, saying I should have tried harder to make him happy. He accused me of always being too busy trying to be independent. I shook my head and reminded him how my job put food on the table while he was unemployed, and even when he was studying. John argued that I could have quit my job after his business took off, but I told him I couldn't take that risk. We both needed jobs to ensure our future. I was furious at his attempt to dodge responsibility. I reminded him that I never neglected him or Emily, and always did all the housework, despite my job. He had no right to blame me. Turning to Lisa, I wished her luck before leaving the table. I knew exactly what I needed to do next. Somehow, John seemed relieved that the burden of finding a reason to divorce was lifted. Emily and I had just become roommates with him, living under the same roof. I was already doing most of the housework, so I figured I had nothing to lose. As I left him, I packed my things and Emily's, while John kept asking what I was doing. I told him, and he tried to argue, saying I was being too cold and that we needed a break to think things through. But I had nothing left to think about. I was done. I went to my parents' house. If you're wondering if his parents ever came to comfort me, they didn't. They never said anything to John about the breakup. I later found out why. You see, Lisa wasn't just young. She came from a wealthy family. By marrying her, John would secure financial stability. Honestly, I didn't care about that. My goal was to make sure John and I could be good co-parents for Emily's sake. At first, Lisa didn't seem like a bad person, so I hoped she would be a good stepmother to Emily. During the divorce, I took half of John's assets, which was substantial since his business was making six figures. John and I had joint custody, so if I had Emily from Monday to Friday, he had her from Friday night to Monday morning, when he would take her to school. After the divorce, he quickly let Lisa move in with him, and Emily started going to their house on weekends. Emily would come home and excitedly tell me how Lisa and John took her to fancy restaurants or amusement parks. She was always thrilled to see them on weekends. At first, I didn't notice anything, but gradually, Emily started to withdraw more and more from me. I was the parent who made Emily do her homework and taught her how to do chores like washing dishes or folding laundry, which she didn't enjoy. I insisted on her eating healthy foods and refused to order from McDonald's. She always demanded expensive gifts that I thought were inappropriate for a child. On the other hand, John and Lisa were the fun parents who took her everywhere, letting her spend weekends watching TV and eating tasty food. Emily often told me how cool they were, and if I didn't listen, she'd say hurtful things like wishing she could live with them. It broke my heart, but I tried not to let it get to me since she was just a kid. When Emily turned 12, Lisa got pregnant with twins, which made Emily very anxious. She constantly worried if John would still love her, and I had to reassure her that he would. Her anxiety grew so intense that I had to talk to John about it. He eventually spoke to Emily and assured her of his love. Emily then asked to spend more time with him, so she started going to his house on Wednesday nights, instead of just weekends. She had her own room there, but with the twins on the way, John decided to renovate the basement for her and turn her bedroom into a nursery. This was all decided without my knowledge because Emily barely communicated with me anymore. After the twins were born, John told me that Lisa didn't want Emily to come over for the next 2 months because she wanted to focus on the babies. I yelled at him, saying this would devastate Emily and make her question his love. He insisted he needed to be there for Lisa and the twins, and that they were his priority. When I broke the news to Emily, she started crying and kept asking why Lisa didn't want her around anymore. I did my best to comfort her. A month later, when John came to pick up Emily, she was overjoyed. Later, she excitedly told me how adorable the twins were, how beautiful they looked, and how nice her new room in the basement was. After seeing pictures of her new room, I had to admit it was pretty nice. Though I was a bit annoyed that she had agreed to give up her bedroom for the twins. But if my daughter was happy, I was happy. As time passed, Emily found more and more reasons to stay with John and Lisa. She loved babysitting the twins, especially when Lisa needed a break. This really bothered me, so I told John to stop using Emily as a babysitter. He argued that the kids could bond without Emily changing diapers and bottle feeding them, which wasn't a job for a teenager. After some heated discussions, he finally agreed. However, Emily was furious when she found out. She said Lisa had told her that I had complained to John about it. Emily insisted she wanted to help with the twins, but I knew she was trying to fit in and please John and Lisa by doing what they wanted. I assured her that I had no bad intentions, that I just wanted her to enjoy her teenage years, and that what John and Lisa were doing was essentially making her grow up too fast. But she didn't care. And that was the beginning of Emily always choosing Lisa over me. I never had any fondness for Lisa, but it stung every time my own daughter compared me to her stepmother. Teenagers can be harsh, and Emily was no exception. She started being mean to me. I remember one day after work, I came home and found her sitting in front of the TV, eating ice cream. She came out of her room and commented on how I was turning into a fat cow, which caught me off guard since I wasn't even overweight. When I asked why she said that, Emily told me Lisa had taught her that gluten makes people fat and that she wasn't allowed to eat gluten at John and Lisa's house. I explained that while gluten might not be for everyone, it wasn't inherently bad, and she had no right to shame someone for eating it. Emily became a completely different person. Every conversation involved how Lisa did this or that, and it seemed like she was turning into a mini Lisa. She refused to go out with me if the sun was out, saying she didn't want to tan. She insisted on skipping breakfast to lose a few extra pounds and fit into a bikini Lisa bought her that was a size too small. Emily weighed herself every day and told me Lisa said she could enter a beauty contest if she kept up this regimen. When I found out, I was furious. I had never spoken to Lisa before, but I decided I'd had enough and confronted her. Lisa didn't see any problem with Emily's behavior. She said she merely suggested Emily enter the beauty pageant and it wasn't her fault if Emily took it to heart. I pointed out that Emily saw her as a second parent and she should be more careful with her words. Lisa retorted that I should push my daughter to be the best version of herself. Shocked by her response, I asked her to keep her weird ideologies to herself. Later, John called to yell at me for speaking to his wife that way. When I told him everything, he sided with Lisa, saying Emily shouldn't take Lisa's advice too seriously. I shouted back, telling him to open his eyes because it was clear Emily was heavily influenced by Lisa. But my ex-husband didn't seem to care. I tried talking to Emily, urging her to enjoy her teenage years without worrying about things like weight and tanning, but she remained steadfast, closing herself off and stopping any attempts at open communication. It was excruciatingly painful to watch my daughter drift further away from me. Emily didn't come to me for any decisions or general life situations. For example, if her school was taking her on a trip, she'd wait to visit her father so he could sign the form, even though I had never had any issues with her traveling. It seemed like she didn't see any importance in my role in her life. I felt relegated to the background, like a mere spectator in her life. And as a result, I fell into a pretty depressed state. But then, I met someone who changed my life. Henry and I met when I was at my lowest point. When Henry and I started dating, he could see how much Emily's behavior was affecting me and reassured me that every teenager goes through a rebellious phase. However, things were only getting worse. Emily and I were constantly fighting, either because of her bad grades or because she didn't turn in her homework on time. Then Emily started blaming me for everything, constantly commenting on how she understood why John left me for Lisa. It was a painful topic, and she broke my heart every time she brought it up with such anger. I hate to admit it, but I started to slowly distance myself from my daughter. When Emily turned 18 and it was time for college, she and John came to me to discuss something important. I assumed it was about paying for college and was ready to tell John that I was willing to pay half of her tuition. But instead, John told me that Emily wanted me to give up my parental rights. I was shocked when Emily told me she had been thinking about this for a long time and wanted Lisa to officially adopt her. At first, I thought it was all just a bad dream, but Emily pleaded with me, saying she loved Lisa more than me and wanted her to be her real mother. I asked her to explain her reasons, hoping to change her mind. Emily said she wanted to be Lisa's legitimate child and part of her heritage because that's what Lisa's parents had promised her. As Emily poured out her heart, I tried to hold back my emotions. It felt like my world was crumbling around me, like everything I had worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers. The realization that my daughter no longer saw me as her mother was a crushing blow that left me feeling deeply lost. Emily continued to plead with me, saying she had always seen Lisa as her real mother. John agreed with Emily and told me I shouldn't take it personally and should respect Emily's wishes. Over the next few weeks, I had a difficult decision to make. Despite the pain coursing through my veins, I knew I had to respect Emily's wishes. I couldn't force her into a relationship she no longer wanted, nor could I deny her the opportunity to seek happiness on her own terms. My parents tried to talk to Emily, but she refused to return their calls. In the days that followed, I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I mourned the loss of the bond I once shared with Emily, longing for the daughter who had filled my life with joy. Yet amidst my grief, I also felt a sense of resignation, a quiet acceptance of the inevitable. Henry stood by my side through it all, witnessing the tears that I shed incessantly. Even he couldn't comprehend the cruelty of Emily's actions towards me. With a heavy heart, I reluctantly agreed to Emily's request, knowing it marked the end of a significant chapter in both our lives. Skipping over the legal intricacies, it took a couple of weeks before Emily and I officially parted ways, and Danny proceeded with the adoption process. After that, Emily practically ceased communication with me. The pain I felt during those days is indescribable. For so long, my life had revolved around my daughter, and watching her drift away was excruciating. I must acknowledge Henry's unwavering support throughout this ordeal. He never gave up on me, encouraging me to seek therapy and moving in with me to provide constant care. Diagnosed with depression, I began medication, finding solace in Henry's steadfast presence. His encouragement led me to join his business, a decision I embraced wholeheartedly, recognizing Henry as the partner I had always deserved but never had. Immersing myself in work and nurturing my relationship with Henry, I rediscovered joy in life's simple pleasures. Over the past 6 years, Henry and I have been dedicated to building his business, where he graciously made me an equal partner, ensuring we respect each other both professionally and personally. Eventually, we got married and built a fulfilling life together. I never expected Emily, who hadn't reached out in years, to suddenly call me yesterday out of the blue. Her unexpected call caught me off guard and stirred up emotions I thought I had buried deep inside. I wasn't sure of her reasons for calling, but I was glad she remembered me after all this time. Despite the legal changes, she'll always be my daughter, and I'll always love her, despite the pain she's caused. At first, I thought she might have matured and wanted to reconnect with me. However, our conversation quickly turned to her upcoming wedding, and I was surprised to learn that my daughter was getting married, which I couldn't help but feel emotional about. She went on to explain that she reached out because she needed financial help with the wedding expenses. I was shocked to hear that Mark's business had struggled recently, and Liza couldn't contribute because she was saving for her twins. Emily mentioned that she had noticed my successful life with Henry through social media stalking, suggesting that since I was doing well, I could easily support her wedding financially, as she felt I owed her that much. My initial joy and surprise quickly turned to disbelief, as Emily seemed to expect my help without considering our strained past. It struck me as entitled, especially considering she was the one who distanced herself from me. Politely, I explained that while I appreciated her reaching out and wanting a relationship, I couldn't simply overlook everything that had happened between us. I reminded her of her desire for Danny to adopt her, effectively severing our legal ties, and how she viewed Danny as her true mother. I struggled to understand why she felt entitled to my financial support. Emily argued that I was still her biological mother and that it wasn't fair for me to have financial stability while denying her a few $1,000s for her wedding. I emphasized that, while I wished her happiness, I couldn't write a blank check for her wedding expenses. I couldn't simply write a blank check to cover Emily's wedding expenses. She became angry and resorted to name-calling, accusing me of not having fought hard enough for her over the years. It felt like she was grasping at straws to justify her demands, and our conversation ended abruptly with her angrily hanging up. Now, I find myself questioning whether I should have just helped her with a wedding that I could afford. Unexpectedly, my post about this situation went viral on Reddit within days, and I've been inundated with messages from strangers urging me to give in to Emily's demands. Initially, I felt guilty because she's my daughter, but the comments pointing out that she's using me made me second-guess myself. It's incredibly tough as a parent to stop loving your child, even when they don't want you anymore. Emily will always be my child, but she's an adult now, and I have to accept that reality. Mark and Danny haven't reached out to me, so I'm unsure if they know about Emily asking for financial help. I've decided not to assist her in any way, and Henry and I are discussing how best to handle the situation together. As many of you suggested, I sent Emily a message this morning thanking her for reaching out and sharing her life updates. I appreciated hearing from her and understood her need for financial support for the wedding, but I had to be honest about where I stand. I respectfully declined her request because she never wanted me to be a part of her life before, and I believe it's crucial to maintain our current distance for my own well-being and boundaries. I wish her nothing but the best as she begins this new chapter, and I hope she can understand and respect my decision. Emily saw my message but chose not to respond, confirming my suspicion that her intentions may not have been genuine. Henry is upset with how Emily has treated me and has advised me to block her to prevent further unreasonable requests. Although this situation has been controversial, I want to reassure those concerned that while Henry and I don't have children of our own, he has nieces and nephews whom we will support. I'm grateful for all the support and advice I've received from the Reddit community. Moving forward, I'll focus on my own well-being and continue nurturing a loving relationship with my husband.